Good morning, everybody. I don't know what I'm most excited about this morning. I mean, first of all, the chance to speak at the University of California. My daughter's pretty excited. She's 17 years of age. She's currently studying in school back in the UK, but she decided years ago when she goes to university, and bearing in mind she's from a country that we have Oxford, we have Cambridge, we have so many universities, she wants to study in California. And I guess that's the allure that this place has for people all over the world and why it's become such a magnet for talent. The second reason I'm excited to be here, obviously, is it's kicking off our partnership with TechWadi. I didn't realize that this is actually the 9th annual forum. It's my first, but I hope to be stood here again in 9 years' time, celebrating the EDB's long-term engagement and partnership with what I think is a hugely impressive network and a hugely important opportunity for us in Bahrain as we pursue our ambitions here in Silicon Valley. But perhaps the third and most important reason I'm excited to be here, of course, is I get the opportunity to share my story. The Bahrain story, it's a story that has its roots many decades ago, but has really taken shape and accelerated in more recent years. But before I get on to that, I want to transport you about 6,000 miles east to another important event that's been taking place globally this week, to Davos, of course, in Switzerland, where world leaders have been gathering for the annual World Economic Forum. This is an event that's been extremely important to Bahrain for many years. We have an important delegation there, again this week, led by ministers, government officials, business leaders, CEOs, founders, and we will continue our involvement with Davos. But what we're really excited about is that our involvement with Davos and the World Economic Forum now actually extends here to San Francisco. We have a member of our team, Neda Al-Said, and you'll hear from Neda a little bit later. I think she's on one of the panel sessions. Neda, would you like to stand up at risk of embarrassing you here? Neda is on secondment from the Bahrain EDB to the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution here in San Francisco. Now, this is an initiative that is extremely important to Bahrain. It's extremely important, I guess, to all of us, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Why is it so important to Bahrain? Well, if we're frankly honest, and I'm speaking to a room full of people that know a lot about the Middle East, probably far more than I do, quite frankly, we missed the first three, didn't we? I mean, when you think back to the so-called First Industrial Revolution, the late 18th century, and the emergence of steam power, and then the second so-called Industrial Revolution. This is, of course, all according to Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, and the emergence of mass production. You'll see very little reference to Bahrain and the wider region. Even when we move on to the third Industrial Revolution, the emergence in the 1960s onwards of computing and electronics, the era during which, of course, Silicon Valley became a globally recognized powerhouse. In Bahrain and the Gulf, we were far more preoccupied with making money out of oil than we were focusing on computing and electronic technology. So the first three kind of passed us by, but the fourth one is extremely important. And I guess the reason for this, there are many reasons for this, but perhaps the most significant is that we've seen a decline in oil prices in recent years, which has forced not just Bahrain, but Saudi Arabia and other neighboring oil-producing nations to really consider their future economic growth and well-being. No longer can these countries rely purely upon oil as a driver for GDP. We have to diversify our economy. We have to embrace entrepreneurship. We have to embrace innovation. We have to embrace technology. And Bahrain wants to be very much at the forefront of that from a regional perspective. We have one advantage in Bahrain, of course. We never had as much oil as some of our neighboring countries to begin with. So we've been diversifying for a number of years. We've been a financial center, you could argue, for a century. Standard Chartered is currently celebrating 100 years as a bank in Bahrain. But certainly from the 1970s onwards, Bahrain started to emerge as a leading regional financial center. During that time, we also pioneered Islamic finance, of course. But what we've been looking to do in relation to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, in relation to the digital transformation of our entire economy, cuts across multiple sectors, not just financial services. I'm going to return to financial services in a few minutes because I want to use FinTech as an example of the progress that we're making in this space. But we are, in fact, working on a national economic strategy that cuts across 6 sectors, 6 industries entirely. In addition to the financial services, we're very heavily focused on the manufacturing sector, the transport and logistics sector, the energy sector. We're looking at healthcare, and we're looking at tourism. You know, we have one of the most beautiful locations in the world, frequently voted one of the best places in the world to live, one of the best places in the world to work. So tourism is going to be very important to the future of our economy as well. And then as well as these sectors, we're looking at enablers that cut across multiple sectors. We're looking to develop our startup ecosystem. We're looking to develop, obviously, the human talent, the human capital that is absolutely necessary for any successful startup ecosystem or any economy based on entrepreneurship. We're looking to really grab hold of the entire ICT sector at large and position Bahrain, and this is an extremely ambitious statement to make, but we're an extremely ambitious country, ultimately is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East and North Africa. So that's our ambition. Just to pick on a particular area in which we're trying to focus in the short term, we're trying to position Bahrain very much as a testbed. Now, many of you will be familiar with Bahrain, but for those of you that are not, we're a tiny island adjacent to Saudi Arabia, population just 1.4 million. And we're trying to turn our size on its head and develop Bahrain very much as somewhere that businesses globally that are looking to do business in the Middle East can come test new ideas with an innovation-friendly government, innovation-friendly regulation, before rolling those ideas out into bigger markets, bigger economies across the region. This is the short-term aim, to attract innovators from around Bahrain, to bring their ideas to Bahrain and to test those ideas in the kingdom. And of course, the long-term aim is we want Bahrain to become, like Silicon Valley, the place where in future ideas are actually born. And that is our stated ambition. It's being led from the very highest level by His Highness, Crown Prince of Bahrain, the EDB's Chief Executive, Khalid Al-Rumayhi, the Governor of the Central Bank of Bahrain, government ministers, CEOs, founders, everyone involved in what we call Team Bahrain is committed to that end goal. So I want to use FinTech as a case study, if you like, for the kind of progress that we're making in Bahrain in this particular space. Now we, as I've already mentioned, are not new to financial services. We have over 400 licensed financial institutions. We pioneered Islamic finance. We have a very robust banking sector. But we recognized back in 2016, when I first relocated to the kingdom, and perhaps a few years too late, the importance of digital transformation in finance and the importance of ensuring that our industry was fit for purpose in the 21st century. You'd already been doing this in the US. We'd seen the emergence of FinTech, not just here on the West Coast, but on the East Coast as well. We'd seen London emerge as a European capital of FinTech. We'd seen Hong Kong, Singapore emerge as FinTech hubs, and China become a real powerhouse for innovation in finance and payments. But there wasn't really much activity in the Gulf or the Middle East in this particular space. And I think it's fair to say that Bahrain was first out of the blocks, given its history in this particular space. And when we sat down in 2016 and thought about building a FinTech ecosystem, we thought about it. I used to talk about the chair with 4 legs. If you look at that chair there, it has 4 legs. If you remove one leg, while the other 3 legs are in perfect working order, the chair's gonna topple over. And we felt there were 4 legs, 4 pillars that we needed to address. And if we only got 3 right, our ecosystem still wouldn't function in the way we needed it to do. And the 4 pillars were: number 1, regulation; number 2, the existing financial institutions; number 3, of course, the startups, the innovators, the entrepreneurs; and number 4 was funding. And we started to put in place a plan against each of these 4 pillars, which we've been pursuing aggressively ever since. From a regulatory perspective, the first thing that we did was launch a regulatory sandbox. Now, this concept may be familiar to some of you in the room. It's not unique to Bahrain. There are sandboxes in other parts of the world. It's an opportunity for the regulator, and let's not forget that the financial services sector is one of the most highly regulated industries in the world. It's an opportunity for the regulator to look at new innovation in finance And instead of perhaps diving in and embracing it too quickly and running risks in terms of consumer protection, money laundering, and other issues that regulators are there to protect against, or perhaps be a little bit too cautious, and in being too cautious, killing innovation, killing FinTech before it had even had a chance to blossom. The Sandbox allows the regulator to buy itself some space, to invite entrepreneurs around the world to bring their platforms, to bring their ideas, to test those platforms in Bahrain, with certain limitations on number of customers, for example, under the watchful eye of the regulator for a period of 9 to 12 months, allowing the regulator to properly understand the innovation before making decisions around regulation, licensing, so on and so forth. I'm delighted, actually, one of the participants in our Sandbox is here with us today. So we have Hasey Nelson. Please, do you want to stand up? We have Rain, one of 6 crypto exchanges that are currently testing in Bahrain. And the Central Bank of Bahrain has just put out its white paper looking at crypto regulations for consultation with industry. And I think it's fair to say that the policy that's being put in place in Bahrain as a center for crypto is very much influenced by the positive experience that we've had working with Rain. So delighted to have you here today, and a local San Francisco-based company as well, I might add. We've also looked at open banking. We had our first graduate from the Sandbox recently, Tarabat. That's a service provider for the banks in terms of helping them to open up their data to entrepreneurs within the fintech and payment space. This is something that's being forced through very ambitiously by our central bank. They've told all banks they need to be responding in relation to open banking by the end of this month, by next week, and implementing their policies for open banking by the summer. Robo-advisory, we've just put out, again, guidelines for how we're going to embrace robo-advisory in Bahrain on the back of the Sandbox and the opportunity that we've had to work with entrepreneurs from all over the world to test these ideas and services in Bahrain. Of course, it's not just about regulation, it's about legislation. We've put in place new insolvency laws, very much based upon what you have here in the US, new data protection laws, new competition law, really trying to overhaul, update, and modernize not just our regulation, but our legislation to position ourselves as an innovation-friendly hub for financial services. So that's the regulation, and you have to start there, because if you don't get the regulation right, then you can attract as many entrepreneurs as you like. It's not going to work, quite frankly. Then we turned our attention to the existing corporates, the existing financial institutions, the banks, and other players in Bahrain. And we somehow had to get them kicking and screaming in some cases from a point of ignorance as far as innovation and technology is concerned, to curiosity. And even when we got them to curiosity, there was a degree of pessimism. So then we had to get them to curiosity with a tinge of optimism as opposed to pessimism. And then we had to actually get them to start taking action, to start embracing innovation, to start embracing technology, to start working on their own digital agenda. And of course, one of the ways that we've been able to do that is twofold. In the case of big multinational players in Bahrain, companies like American Express, like BNP Paribas, we've been able to leverage the innovation that's taken on within those companies in other parts of the world, in America, in the case of Amex, in France, in the case of BNP Paribas, and bring that innovation to Bahrain. In the case of the local banks that didn't have that international exposure or international experience, we've been doing a whole range of initiatives. We've been connecting them with startups from all over the world, providing a matchmaking service so that we connect a bank with a particular need with an innovator that could be from Silicon Valley or any other part of the world that has a solution to that particular need. We've been taking banks and financial institutions all over the world with us as delegations to listen to and learn from experts. And we've been bringing those experts to Bahrain. In fact, in just a few weeks' time, we'll celebrate what we call Fintastic Week Bahrain, an entire 9 days dedicated to innovation in finance, where we'll be joined by, amongst many others, one of Silicon Valley's finest, Steve Wozniak. So an entire week where we bring the experts, where we bring the innovators, the movers, the shakers to Bahrain to share their story with the financial institutions and the other corporates within the kingdom, to help them to understand this massive period of change that we're going through, to embrace it and to execute accordingly. So we've got the regulators on board, we've got the existing industry on board. But of course, you can't have a FinTech ecosystem without the startups, without the scale-ups, without entrepreneurs like AC here, that actually are the ones that are tech savvy enough to be coming up with these innovative solutions in the first place. So again, a bit like the comment I made earlier, that in the short term we want to attract innovators, but in the longer term we want to be the place where ideas are born. We've been doing just that. We've been looking to attract entrepreneurs from all over the world. There are quite a number that we're now in dialogue with here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. I'm pleased to say they're either in the process of setting up in Bahrain or are looking at Bahrain as a location option. But of course, in the medium, longer term, what we want to be doing as well is growing our own homegrown entrepreneurs within the FinTech space. So there are initiatives in place to address that as well. Finally, funding. We were on Sand Hill Road last night, and I'm not quite sure just how many VCs you have along that stretch alone. But certainly what we have in Bahrain from a funding perspective fades into insignificance by comparison. But we need to ensure that when entrepreneurs launch ideas in Bahrain, whether they're homegrown or whether they come into Bahrain seeking finance, that they get access to that finance. So again, a range of initiatives in this particular space. We've been persuading the banks to be a little bit more startup, SME friendly. We've launched our own Al-Waqa Fund of Funds, which is being managed by the Bahrain Development Bank. We've been pursuing new initiatives in alternative forms of finance, such as crowdfunding. We've just revamped and updated our crowdfunding regulations because we're looking to attract more alternative forms of finance into the kingdom. We've been working with family offices to educate them that, yes, they've made a lot of money over the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in safe havens like real estate, but tech actually is not just a risk, but it's an opportunity. So starting to open up finance and funding opportunities as well. And we feel that these four pillars will stand our ecosystem for FinTech in good stead and allow us to build on our ambitions to become the leading FinTech hub in the region, and potentially in terms of Islamic and Sharia compliant FinTech, the leading hub globally. To pull all of that together, just this time last year, we launched Bahrain FinTech Bay, an ecosystem under one roof. A space, yes, where startups can gather and work together in the way that thousands do across this particular part of the world, but also sponsored by 30 founding partners, all drawn from the wider financial industry. We want to make sure that the industry took ownership for this initiative, not a government agency such as the EDB. The regulator has space at Bahrain FinTech Bay. You can actually sit down and have a cup of coffee with the regulator and talk about your idea. How cool is that? We have all of the different stakeholders that contribute to the ecosystem in Bahrain now housed under one roof, now working together at FinTech Bay, but also working on policy and initiatives such as talent. How do we develop the future talent that the industry needs, the data scientists, the coders, the programmers? Looking at things like women in FinTech. How do we attract more female entrepreneurs and founders into this particular space? Looking at a whole raft of different initiatives that will support our ecosystem moving forward. What's next? I made the point earlier that Bahrain is actually a tiny island. We can't operate independently as you might be able to do as a business here in the US, where you have a massive domestic market. We have to think globally. We have to think regionally. From a regional perspective, for me, it is all about collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. In the last year, I've been to Lebanon, I've been to Egypt. I've not been to Jordan. I mean, after last night, I'm definitely going to Jordan next, that's for sure. I mean, I'm sold on Jordan after last night. I've been to Kuwait, I've been to Saudi, all over Saudi, to Jeddah, to Riyadh, been to Abu Dhabi, been to Dubai. And the reason for this is to try to build bridges with our neighbors. The most common comment that I get whenever I travel around the world about the region is, wow, wouldn't it be so much more attractive if you all work together to create one single market opportunity, as is the case in the US or the EU. And I think we've had some breakthrough moments over the last year, baby steps albeit. We now have an MOU with Abu Dhabi Global Markets. We're in active dialogue with the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority. We're engaged with many of the other players across the region to see how we can put in place things like reciprocal arrangements. And if you graduate from the Sandbox in Bahrain, can you then automatically do business in Kuwait or other parts of the region, because the CBB's decision is recognized by other regulators across the region. We formed a group of regulators where they come together now to look at passporting, reciprocal arrangements, sharing good practice, and other initiatives. And this, for me, at a regional level, is going to be a real focus, again, over the next year and beyond. How do we pull together the different ecosystems across the region to work together as one? Of course, there will continue to be some healthy competition. There may well be a business sat in this room today that's looking at Abu Dhabi or Bahrain as a location option, and we would compete for your business. But we're going beyond the needs of individual businesses here and looking at the region as a whole, the market opportunity as a whole, and what entrepreneurs and investors are looking for when they come over to do business. Beyond the region, we're also looking globally. We signed a memorandum of understanding with the Monetary Authority of Singapore in November, a location that we have great admiration for in terms of the strides that it's made in this particular space. We work very closely with London, and I'm proud to say that Bahrain was actually one of 12 founding members of the Global Innovation in Finance Network, alongside the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and other players that have all agreed to work together to do what we're trying to do on a regional basis to ensure that there's collaboration, passport, and reciprocal arrangements for innovation in this particular space. So we've come a long way in a relatively short space of time. I've used FinTech as an example because that's something that I've personally been very closely involved with, but we're looking at Internet of Things. We're looking at a wide range of opportunities. How might Bahrain position itself for autonomous vehicles, for argument's sake? And I think I can conclude, because I'm being told that my time is up, by saying that we may have missed the first, second, and third industrial revolution, but we're very much open for business as far as the fourth is concerned. And to conclude with the saying that we have in Bahrain, data is the new oil. Thank you very much.